And did I read recently that you're on Shark Tank?
We were on Shark Tank in 2017. Yes.
That
So
was a while ago.
it was a while ago. It was a great experience. It was really fun. We had a fun time. And, I think the intangible, well, some of them are very tangible, but there's a lot of, there's been a lot of benefits and perks to having been on Shark Tank outside of doing this deal, and certainly the kind of recognition and media attention that we've received. I think even just being able to talk about the experience of doing it has been really fun. People are pretty interested in just what that's like to be on the show.
Welcome to A Founder's Life, and I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thanks.com, that's THANKZ.com, with the subject line A Founder's Life, and you'll get $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited to be joined today by Megan Reamer. Megan, thanks for joining. Would you like to kick off by introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me, Leo. I'm Megan Reamer. I'm the founder of a snack food company called Jackson's. We make sweet potato, regular kettle chips, and now veggie straws. That's our new product. And they're all cooked in avocado oil. And we've been doing this. We founded this business about, 12 years ago. And we're still doing it and still growing and still making chips and straws and having a great time. Sorry, I can't hear you. I lost you for a second. You're, it looks like you're muted somehow.
That was weird.
There we go. Okay. Okay.
Lucky I've got an editor who's going to fix all this.
Okay.
So I'll ask that question again. So thank you. I'd love to hear some of your work journey that brought you to where you are today and some of the personal stories that led to the creation of the brand.
It's actually really tied together. So I know you're this serial entrepreneur and have this long history of, starting, buying businesses, selling them and having that be your career. Mine was not that. I think there's definitely a personality type of someone who embarks on starting businesses, growing them, exiting them and does that over and over. And I would say I probably have a few of those characteristics, but I had a much more traditional work career as far as working for a large company and gaining pretty great, wonderful professional and personal experience doing that and growing in those roles. It was sort of, I'd say, like I said, more on the traditional side. I worked as just a staff reporter for the Wall Street Journal when I first started out of college and did that for several years. And this was quite a long time ago. That was like the primary source really for real-time news headlines and reporting and their ticker like Newswire service that continually runs across the bottom of the trading floor. So those headlines are what we were getting out and filing stories and reporting real time, and in addition to what we were publishing in the paper. And then I worked for Accenture for about 10 years doing management consulting for various industries, and then stayed home and was a stay-at-home mom for about 12 or 13 years. And so this business, Jackson's, that we started, this snack company, is this intersection, like significant result of this very personal driven need in our home to accommodate a restrictive diet that my son had. His name is Jackson. And then continuing to make this product and having some great response. And I think a more typical story of like meeting our own need, having a good reception to it, kind of putting pen to paper and deciding whether this was something we could start a business out of, and then throwing our hat in the ring and doing that and continuing to evolve and change and grow the business from there. So that's kind of the nutshell of Jackson's.
And did I read recently that you're on Shark Tank?
We were on Shark Tank in 2017. Yes. So
That was a while ago.
It was a while ago. It was a great experience. It was really fun. We had a fun time. And, I think the intangible, well, some of them are very tangible, but there's a lot of, there's been a lot of benefits and perks to having been on Shark Tank outside of doing this deal, and certainly the kind of recognition and media attention that we've received. I think even just being able to talk about the experience of doing it has been really fun. People are pretty interested in just what that's like to be on the show.
Yeah, I think the value of the marketing is the biggest thing about Shark Tank. I've had a couple of friends who've had businesses on there.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit more about family. Obviously, you talked a little bit, but talk a little more about what family means to you.
Well, I have 4 kids. And so my oldest child, Jackson, who we named this business after and really wanted to, I think, share his journey and his story. He had this rare autoimmune disease that was undiagnosed for 12 years. And so it started when he was about kind of 2 to 3 years old. And he went from walking, talking, happy, healthy toddler to losing all of that function over a several year process and living in a wheelchair. He became part of this experimental drug trial when he was 15, and he passed away from that drug trial about a year and a half later when he was 16. That was also in 2017. So, we lived in this space. He was my oldest child. And then I have 2 daughters and a son. And so we all lived in this space with him, this huge gray unknown area for so many years that I think it really shifted our dynamic around just being very present and being very involved in whatever we were able to do with him. And then we had everybody else, our other kids along for the ride on that. And so I think just having this mindset around, we didn't have a prognosis for him. We didn't even have a diagnosis. So we didn't really know how long we were going to have him in our lives. And we tried to make the best of it all the time. So I think when you're, it's not this recklessness, but it is this intention around how you're spending your days and your time, and how when that time goes from kind of week to month to years, right? Like, how are you trying to be the most productive and engaged with it? And then, once he passed away, that I think just intensified around recognizing how short life is, and that it changes significantly. Like, my son was not supposed to die. Like, he wasn't supposed to pass away. And so it was completely unexpected. And I think that as well can be this mind shift that is very challenging to try to wrap your head around. And then, it does kind of put these existential questions in front of you around, who do I want to spend my time with? How do I want to spend it? Right? Really natural things that happen with loss. And they happened individually for all of us in our family and then collectively. And so, that has driven a lot of how we spend our time together and what we choose to do with it. We live in a really active community in this little ski town in Colorado. And so at a baseline, you're skiing and hiking and mountain biking. Like, there's no other real reason to live here, because we get snow for 6 months out of the year at the least, and have a really short summer of like 60 days of summer. And so you're trying to squeeze the life out of every single day, just physically and actively, that you've got from where we live. So I think that, for family, that means spending a lot of time together and making those minutes count that we do have together, and trying to do something really fun with that time and time that we were able to spend together. I've teenagers. And so grabbing them for, an hour a day and trying to make sure that's really some good time to spend together, whatever it is. If we're hopping on a bike and going on a bike ride, just creating prioritization for that.
And what really follows on again from what you were talking about, but what does health mean to you, whether that be exercise, nutrition, sleep? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of those things for me, and prioritizing those, right? Some of those choices were driven out of this need we had with our son years ago. And so really understanding nutrition and diet, and not sort of, are these organic? Is this organic produce? Is this gluten-free? Are we reading labels correctly for what his needs are, and then extending that to ourselves and the rest of our children? It was a pretty deep process for that. And it is the origin of the business we started, because, we needed to feed him healthy fats, and we needed to understand how to define that, and how to categorize, what type of fats fit into that category for us. And they were, more saturated fats, avocado oil, coconut oil, butter, tallow, lard, all of these things that at that point in time, this was like 2005, 2004, we'd been told, myself, growing up my age, had been told to stay away from fat, right? Do low fat, and then you end up eating sort of a more carb focused diet, right? So it was really reorienting all of that. And so on a nutrition level for our family and for our lifestyles, that process happened years ago, 20 at least at this point. And so that's really driven kind of what our choices are in our home around what we're eating, what we fed our kids, what we did as parents and introduced food and all of that stuff. And then of course it's exercise, both, I'd say kind of organized around like you could see I have a Peloton bike in the back and a weight, right? So it's like it's creating time for that and making sure that we're building muscle mass and all of these things, particularly as we get older. But then all of those things I mentioned, like let's hop on a bike and go on a bike ride, or let's go ski a few runs. We're lucky. We live in this town that our ski area is like 2 miles away. And so you can kind of get out easily and get back home and still have a full day of work. And so, that's luck. And that's also making some really concrete decisions about where we wanted to raise our kids and what we were looking for in the type of community that we were living in. So it's all of those pieces that you mentioned: sleep, nutrition, exercise, and then being able to get out in nature. It's really interesting how mentally that supports your well-being and having really easy access to that. I have my older daughter went to college in New Orleans, and which is a fun, lovely, exciting place to be. And then after kind of about 6 or 7 weeks, she'd be like, I need to come home. Like I need to put my feet in the grass and I need to, hike and I need to get outside and kind of feel really connected. So you get really spoiled. We have been really spoiled living in the town that we live in.
And following on again from that, quite an obvious lead-in was, what do you like to do for fun?
All of those things I've mentioned, really. I mean, it's certainly spending time with my family is number one. We have a really great time together, and we've raised our kids in this same lifestyle, right? So everyone likes to do the same things together. And I volunteer a lot in our town for some local organizations that I'm really passionate about. And so I'm pretty involved with that, from, being the like booster club for the high school with supporting our student athletes and my kids who are student athletes and the others in town, because it is this, it's a community of about, 2,500, 3,000 people. And so it is this village raising your children and this collective effort. And so, there's another nonprofit I'm involved in that is the local cancer support organization for our valley. And so it's really providing services and support for people who are going through their journey for cancer in some capacity, like diagnosis and beyond. So I'm really involved in some local organizations as well and spend a lot of time doing that.
And how would you define a balanced life? So in your perspective, what is a balanced life?
For me, it's making sure that one of those things doesn't outweigh the other. If I were going to skew toward anything, it would be spending more time with my kids and my family, of course. And I'm not sure. It's hard for me personally, with what I've experienced in losing a child, to imagine I can over skew in that direction at all, that I'm spending too much time with my family and with my kids. I can see completely over skewing toward spending too much time working and focused on, something that's very important, obviously, but not at the cost and the expense of what means the most to me, which is, kind of filling up my soul and filling up my heart. And that's getting outside and spending time with my kids.
For me, nothing more important. And what's one piece of advice that you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I think to not let that balance get out of proportion. I think that for me, that was one of the hardest things in starting our business. I knew I was spending too much time focused on the business and work, and it was costing some of my family life. And so trying to understand first what that balance should be for me personally, and then how to commit and stick to it. That was one of the most challenging things. Of course, there are business challenges and problems that come up, right? Like all of those things. How are we paying our employees next month? And so from sort of basic to complex. But I think, understanding what your priorities are and really maintaining them and sticking to it, even if you have to schedule that time, is really important in the long run. It's hard to get it back. It's hard to claw it back when you let it overskew in the wrong direction.
And how can people find you?
Well, they can find me through Jackson's. So our website for Jackson's is snackjacksons.com. Those are our handles as well, our social media, Instagram. So me personally, my email address I can provide to you and share that if anybody wants to reach out. It's meganr@snackjacksons.com.
Thank you for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thanks, Leo. It's been great talking with you.
And thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and leave a review.